This is Carolina Panthers owner David Tepper, a billionaire confronting staff at a restaurant. So what drew his attention? Why was he so adamant of popping in? This was the sign that caught Tepper's attention. It reads, "Please let coach and GM pick this year," a direct reference to Tepper's reported influence on his franchise, picking Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. Per the outlet, Tepper walked in and asked, who was the person responsible for the message? We would learn it was the owner, Matt Woolforth. Woolforth would hilariously say, "I do need him to be more of an owner and less of a coach or a GM." The Charlotte Observer has more. Woolforth said that he put the sign up earlier this week, Monday or Tuesday, and has been a Charlotte resident for decades, including being a personal seat license/season ticket holder since the franchise began in 1995. The reason for this level of disdain at Tepper is because the Panthers have missed the playoffs every season since he bought the team in 2018. Carolina has compiled a 31-68 record in that time frame and has gone through 3 head coaches in the last 3 years. Tepper's reputation also not awesome. He was fined $300,000, chump change to him as a billionaire, in January for, quote, unacceptable conduct, after a video appeared to show him throwing a drink into the crowd. Carolina Panthers governor and top 1%er David Tepper, after the man himself was seen throwing a drink on a fan with the team's latest loss, many demanded a punishment be handed down.
He then releases a statement, quote, "I am deeply passionate about this team and regret my behavior on Sunday. I should have let NFL stadium security handle any issues that arose. I respect the NFL's code of conduct and accept the league's discipline for my behavior," end quote.
So what exactly was the punishment?
The NFL has fined Carolina Panthers owner David Tepper $300,000 for throwing a drink at a Jacksonville Jaguars fan during Sunday's game.
To say this is a slap on the wrist would be an insult to nuns and rulers. As Darren Ravel put in perspective, for those scoring at home, fining David Tepper $300,000, net worth $20.6 billion, is the equivalent of fining the average American $1.77.
Well, my reaction is that is not enough. Clearly, that's a drop in the bucket for him. And I know he came out and said that he's passionate about the team and that he regrets his actions, but we talked about this with Draymond Green. The punishment is supposed to change the behavior going forward. Do we really think fining him $300,000 is going to stop him from doing something like this in the future or really change his behavior?
Fair point from ESPN's Michelle Smallman. The issue with Tepper's reign as Panthers governor may be too much at this point. Plenty have sounded the alarm for quite some time.
In Carolina, it's as big a mess as there is in the NFL. The story that The Athletic wrote yesterday about, the dysfunction and sort of the Hunger Games mentality where coaches and staffers are texting the owner of the team, telling him what's wrong with the team. It's, David Tepper has turned into, he's the new Dan Snyder, minus all the, sexual improprieties and allegations.
A strong statement from longtime NFL media man Peter King.
I've been here since the inception of the Panthers and have watched David Tepper work. He is not patient. He fired Matt Rule mid-season last year, and so when Frank Reich started 1-10, it did feel a little like Damocles' sword dangling there. That did not happen. He spoke about 13 minutes, though, and what did happen was he said, the buck stops here. He claimed he was a very patient man, however, and so that's a clip you probably would like to play at some point. But yeah, he said he was extremely patient in other parts of his business, and he hoped the next guy he hired would be here 20 or 30 years and would eventually give the eulogy at Dave Tepper's funeral.
Scott Fowler, Carolina Panthers beat writer for the Charlotte Observer, weighed in as well.
And Chris Tabor, the special teams coach, he is now the third interim head coach that David Tepper will be employing in his tenure as owner of the Panthers that began in 2018. He has as many interim head coaches as he does head coaches. And when he hires his next head coach, it will be a 7th.
That's crazy.
Since 2018. 4 full-time, 3 interims. And 10 different starting quarterbacks, and just a revolving door that he feels Bryce Young is going to stop, one would imagine. And I even said yesterday, good luck getting somebody who wants to uproot their family, come to Carolina and work for you if you're only going to give them 11 games.
As always, Rich Eisen is on the money. This dude has a history with these signs. Let me tell you about it. Following the 2023 season and the Panthers finishing an abysmal 2-15, one of his signs would read, "Meddling owners never win. Run from Jerry Jones." Yahoo Sports would add, and he was sort of ticked about that one. Why? Well, he's a meddling owner. Brilliant one-liners from the restaurant owner. More from Wolfarth. He'd clarify that it is nice. Tepper wants to win, but he'd say, you got to stay in your lane. This is not really an attack on anyone or anything. This is me expressing frustration because, believe it or not, I actually lose more of my income when the Panthers lose than he does. That's true. Maybe Wolfarth should reread a New York Magazine profile on David Tepper. And it's because if there are people who work at restaurants and treat him the way he doesn't want to be treated, he'll put out quotes like these. Sometimes, he whispers, leaning across the table, if someone is an a-hole like a waiter at a restaurant, I think I could just buy this place and fire that guy. Which is just incredible, isn't it? That is demonic. That is maniacal. To have that thought even cross one's mind. Because a member of the wait staff, who I would guarantee folks like Tepper take advantage of and treat horribly, would have the gall to even admit that they would purchase an establishment just to fire that person. Remarkable. Back to the Young, Stroud, Tepper story. Stephen Holder of ESPN would write on Twitter above a Frank Reich video, "This is painful to watch because it is not the first time I've heard him say this. It's an open secret in the league that the owner heavily influenced the quarterback choice, which is never ideal." Before we jump ahead further with this really interesting story, if you can, please do become a channel member at youtube.com/TYT Sports and or go to tyt.com/join. Also, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. David Tepper has had a tumultuous tenure as owner of the Carolina Panthers, and he took over, if you do remember, when the late owner, Jerry Richardson, sold the franchise in 2018. That also rings an alarm for me and rings a bell. There was a group that was trying to buy the Panthers, and it was led by Stephen Curry, hometown kid, and Diddy. Yeah, Diddy. Anywho, here's what I would say. If the billionaire class wants to stay out of the headlines, just don't do this. But it also goes to show the lack of understanding that they do/don't have. Because he could have easily seen this and just kept on driving. But because of his wealth, he feels that he demands respect everywhere he goes, even though with his own decision-making, he probably passed up on a future Hall of Famer in C.J. Stroud unless we see him take not even a step back, like 20 steps back. Gave the Bears a potential, I say this as a Bears fan, they'll always find a way to screw it up as long as the McCaskies are in charge, but a potential great quarterback, and went with a guy who, in a small sample size, does not look like he could be one of those two quarterbacks that I just listed, C.J. Stroud or Caleb Williams. And with him leading the charge, not only have they fired coaches left and right over and over and over again, apparently this is a business practice of his because he is also owner of Charlotte FC. In 3 years, they have had 3 managers. There is something about David Tepper and sports that just don't mix. And yet here he is on his high horse going into a restaurant, asking about the sign. All reports are indicating that it was somewhat of a friendly banter, but he also saw the host have an Eagles hat on and took it off for him. I am begging many people in positions of power, you don't have to do this. You don't have to get out of your fancy automobiles, go in and demand answers on dissent. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a guy who is telling you about a fragile, egotistical business owner named David Tepper.